Welcome to the fourth video tutorial on Android Runner and its tools. In the last video I talked about the importance of Android Runner's experiment configuration file, which lets you, the researcher, tell the framework exactly how to run your experiment, what profilers you want to use, and what applications you want to test. The aim in this video is to give you a little bit more information about the framework's built-in profilers, such as what they profile. That could be energy consumption, that could be performance metrics, and other available options and other important information. So the first plugin I want to talk about is the Android plugin. This plugin uses the Android built-in tool called Dumpsys, which we talked about in the second video, and it uses this tool to grab CPU and memory information of an application over a specified sample interval. And just to give you a quick review here, type in ADB shell dumpsys CPU info. It outputs a bunch of CPU related information, and this plugin uses this output and this output. So CPU info and mem info. Uses this information to provide some information on these two metrics. And if you want to learn more about this particular plugin, I recommend going to the repository on GitHub. Scrolling all the way down at the bottom, you'll find a link to the original thesis here. So if you have the time, I recommend that. Let's continue. The next profiler is called Trepn. It's a software profiler that must first be installed on your device before you can run any experiments using that profiler. And it runs in parallel with the application that is being profiled. So there are a bunch of different data points that you can grab from the device using this profiler. So you go to the repository again, go to plugins, Trepn, datapoints.json. So these are the metrics that you can grab. So we have Wi-Fi information, memory usage, battery temperature, CPU load, frequency. So a lot of juicy information. And so let's go back. So let's just say, so battery remaining. So let's just keep that in mind. And then let's go to the example configuration file for web. So if you wanted to use Trepn for a web experiment and you wanted to find the battery remaining information from Trepn, you would enter in that key here in the data points list in the configuration file. But before you input anything in the configuration file in the data points section, the first thing that you should do is to run Trepn on your own device and see what data points are available for your particular phone. So I've already started Trepn here. So the first thing that you want to do to confirm this is open up Trepn, click on settings. From there, data points, and this is the information. This is the metrics that your phone has for the Trepn profiler. So then just review this, go to the datapoints.json file, and try to reference which is the correct nomenclature. Okay, so we have CPU1 frequency. So CPU1 frequency here. So then you know, okay, if I add this value into the configuration file, if you add in CPU1 right here, you know that it's going to actually provide you with the information that you need. Okay, let's turn this off. Let's get out of this. So moving on, so the next profile we're going to talk about is battery stats, and this is another software profiler, and it uses a combination of the logcat utility, which again we talked about in the second video. It also uses dumbsys battery stats, uses systrace, and your device's power profile information to estimate energy consumption of the application under test. And one thing to keep in mind is, in order to use systrace, you'll need to install Python 2.7 on your development machine. And then I recommend visiting this link, going to the gather data section, and running the dumbsys battery stats utility just to see what it outputs and how to use it just directly before you use the plugin. So essentially what this plugin does is it uses logcat, dumbsys, systrace, and the power profile to get entry and exit timestamps of the application under test, CPU frequencies along with timestamps, the device's voltage, and also the current consumption of each component on the device using the power profile information. So what I'm going to do now is show you how to retrieve your Android device's power profile. This is going to require installing the APK tool, and to do that I would visit the battery stats README file, and that'll give you some information on how to proceed in installing it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hook up my LG G6. Okay, it's connected. Let's go to Alright, so now that I've established an ADB connection, I'm going to visit this link here, and there's an ADB command that works for my device at least. And I can just copy and paste it here in the terminal, run it. It pulls it from the device and installs it on, or downloads it onto my machine locally here. So there we have an APK file. And now this is when we want to use the APK tool to decode, because the APK is in binary. So let's see. I think it's APK tool D, followed by this. Alright. So if we go to, let's script our, No, let's so res values. Okay. All right, let's just go here. Let's go to home. Share APK tool. Let's do this. Alright, here we go. Oh, it's in res XML. So if we open that, here we have my device's power profile. And this is what you're going to need to have on your machine locally, and then you're going to have to put that file path in the configuration file. So let's go back to the framework. Let's go there. So as you can see here, there's a requirement here for the power profile. So again, I would recommend going to the README for battery stats, and that should give you some information on how to install the APK tool. So we're going to move on. The next profiler we're going to talk about is the Monsoon Power Monitor. So this is the first hardware profiler that was integrated within Android Runner, and it requires the purchase of a Monsoon Power Monitor, which is quite expensive. It measures the entire device's energy consumption over some duration of time. So it's best to use a baseline application to compare against the other applications that you want to test. And one important thing to keep in mind is that the device that you want to use with this profiler, the device's battery must be removed first. The plugin uses the Physalia API, which is essentially a wrapper around Monsoon's own API. And I've already shown this image before, but just to give you a little bit more of an explanation here. So we have a USB here connected to my laptop, which is connected to the back of the Monsoon. And essentially what happens is when you use this plugin with Android Runner, it communicates to the Monsoon to, well, first you have to turn on the Monsoon, of course, and then it communicates to the Monsoon to provide some voltage to the device that it's connected to. And essentially immediately you can then turn on the device manually. When that happens, assuming that you can then connect to the Wi-Fi, you could then establish an ADB connection, which is done through this USB pass-through cable here. But when it starts to profile, it disables this USB pass-through, and then any further ADB communication with the device and the laptop is done over the Wi-Fi connection. Alright, so we're down to the last two plugins. So the next one we're going to talk about is the garbage collector plugin. It's a performance related profiler, and it looks at the particular application's performance in relation to the Android runtime's garbage collector with the help of Logcat. So basically what happens is that when the application is running, if the application uses or creates a bunch of objects, that's going to cause the garbage collector to be called by the runtime environment. And if that gets called too frequently, then the application performance is going to suffer, which obviously means that the user satisfaction is also going to suffer as well. The next one is called frame times, and it's also another performance related profiler, and it focuses on the time that it takes to render each frame of an application's user interface, and it basically collects frame rate statistics. So basically slow frame rates or inconsistent frame rates are not good for user experience, so this helps to determine whether or not it's going to be a good user experience or not. So this is basically the end of this video. I try to keep this video as short as possible. Again, be sure to visit each of the profilers' readmes, since you might find other useful information and useful links there. In the next video, I will talk about preparing your device and your local development environment to run experiments with Android Runner.